Do you like testimonies of overcoming? Saved and Strong shares stories of people who have overcome struggles to find strength. Each episode inspires resilience, hope, and faith, reminding listeners they're not alone.
Hi, I'm Carrie Watts with the Saved and Strong podcast. I'm here today with my friend and author, Dawn Ward. Dawn, I'm so glad that you're here with us today.
Hey, Carrie, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, a little bit about Dawn. Dawn Ward is a speaker, a writer, and a Bible teacher. She is the founder of the Faith to Flourish, a ministry equipping women to live transformed lives through inspiring teaching, mentoring, and biblical resources. The ministry also offers support and encouragement to women with addicted loved ones. She is married to Steve and mom to 3 adult children. Dawn lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she prefers scenic mountain hikes over the lure of the city lights. When she is not busy writing or serving in the women's ministry of her local church, you will find her hanging out with her dogs and reading a good book. Her book is called From Guilt to Grace, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. She's everywhere. She's on Instagram, Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube, so you can find Dawn. Dawn, please tell us more about your book, From Guilt to Grace.
Well, From Guilt to Grace, and that subtitle is Hope and Healing for Christian Moms of Addicted Children. And when I first started praying about and feeling like I should write the book, I had already been ministering to women whose children were struggling with addiction and mental health issues, and also women whose husbands were struggling with it as well. So I had a little bit of a back history, and I'd learned a lot from observation and just listening to their stories and what they were going through. But I really couldn't figure out how to reckon telling my story. I'm comfortable writing like Bible studies and teaching, but when the time came that the Lord wanted me to write the book, I couldn't figure out, like, Lord, how do you want me to write this without airing all my family's dirty laundry, without betraying their trust? And I'm really grateful. At the time I had gone with Hope Books, and I felt like that the developmental editor and just the people that were there showing me support kind of helped me to figure out that process of being able to actually pen my family's story. And because it is a hard story, you know, both of my sons have struggled with addiction at one point or the other. One of them's doing very well in his life. The other one has mental health issues that go along with what he's going through. And so there's a lot more highs and lows. This journey's taken us on. And so I was trying to maintain that message of hope, but at the same time, understanding that our children may or may not beat this in their lifetime. But how do we, as their moms or as the supportive loved one, the wife or the daughter, how do we continue to move forward in the purpose that God has for us? You know, how do we continue to not get stuck, but to continue to be obedient to Him when we're hurting and when our loved one is, their world is crashing down around them. And of course, that has all the effects on us. And so that was really a process for me, and I could not have done it alone because there was, you have that inner turmoil of, do I write this or don't I? And my developmental editor at the time, when she read through the initial manuscript, she said, Dawn, this is really good, but the best parts are your story. We need more of that in there. And so I was really grateful to have that support as my story started to unfold within the book.
Yeah. I think addiction touches every family, especially drug addiction.
Yes.
And nobody is completely prepared. So I can imagine that mom at midnight who's scrolling thinking, is there anybody out there that knows anything about this that can help me? And I can see them coming across your YouTube channel or your Instagram account going, yes, Dawn Ward. So have you heard any testimonies from people who have read your book, who have been inspired and motivated to keep moving forward?
I really have. I'm very grateful for that because for the most part, addiction and the addiction community tends to be anonymous, and they don't really like to come out and talk about what they're going through. Or if they do, they don't want everybody to know. They don't want their neighbor to know and all of that. And so as we're becoming more comfortable as a country and as a nation with actually talking about it, and we're seeing it addressed more in the news. We're seeing more conversation around how we can help and support our families. I'm getting more feedback, but it has been a slow process for me just to gain, followers in that area, because they tend to be concerned about, hey, will another family member or friend see this? So gratefully, I do have a women's group, a support group called Christian Moms of Addicted Children. And there's about 4,000 of us in there. And that's where they really do feel safe to have the conversations around how the book is helping them, and how the support is helping them. What I feel has been the best and most complimentary type of feedback that I can get is the moms who were just so broken and so defeated and feeling like, this is it. My life is always going to be miserable. I'm never going to have any joy. If my child's not healthy, happy, and whole, I can't be. For them to finally give themselves permission to say, God, what is it that you have for me? Joy in you, even if things in my life aren't always going as well as I want them to, or even if my loved one is hurting. And so seeing them, just feeling like, hey, I can actually have this conversation. I can move forward and I can do some things that bring me joy. And that doesn't seem like it would be something, we almost take it for granted, because there is so much conversation around self-care and our own personal well-being that, on social media. But for people who are in this, it just slowly starts to ebb away at their identity, especially as mothers. They might feel guilt and shame. There may be some self-blame there about what could they have done differently. And so they have to get to that place of like just complete release and saying, Lord, I don't want anything or anyone to keep me from your fullness. And so what does that look like to start to move forward and heal? And in my case, I was always Googling how to help my son. My husband also struggled with a pain medication addiction because of all the multiple surgeries he's had. My father, I was raised in an alcoholic home. And so the people in my life, the men in my life that I loved and held very dearly, all struggled with addiction in one form or another. And I kind of got myself caught in that fix mode and save and rescue mode. And so when it happened to my children, I was always online Googling and trying to do research and trying to find help. But these are adults, my children were adults also. My first son who this happened with was only 17 at the time. So mom had a lot more influence, but his older brother, when this happened due to a surgery and being on pain medications and things, he was older, and it was a lot harder for me, but I was still trying to treat him like he was a child, and that mom had all this influence in his life. And so waiting for him to do better and for him to be okay, and then to have him have those periods where he did really well, only to have him crash and spiral down again, I felt like I was kind of stuck. And that, I was a pinball inside of a pinball machine is the best way I could explain it. And not even a roller coaster. Some people say it's a roller coaster, but I felt like, well, roller coasters, when the dips and turns are coming. I just felt like I was ricocheting off the inside of a pinball machine all the time. And so the Lord's, really got me to that point where it was like, Dawn, you need to start to work on your personal relationship with me. Am I Lord of your life? Do you say you trust me? You say you serve me? Then if I ask you to release your son and step forward the things I'm asking you to do, are you willing to do that? And what does it look like to trust me to handle that situation so that you can move forward? And so some of the Googling that had to change was me being out there and looking for help for moms whose children are struggling with addiction and mental health issues. And I found some, but there wasn't really the faith-based material that I was hoping for. Just a few books that were out there that maybe dealt with prodigals and that. But my situation specifically, that when I realized that that was hard to come by, was the start of the Lord calling me to move forward in writing.
Yeah. And there's two things I'm thinking about. I'll ask you one and then I'll ask you the other. Drug addiction does not pick a certain family.
Right.
You don't look like a mom of a addicted son or
Right.
two drug addicted sons, right?
Right.
And so whatever, we think about when we think about a drug addicted family member. I grew up in a middle class home, And my oldest brother was addicted. He passed away of
I'm
of
sorry.
an overdose. And but growing up in that home with the constant my parents trying their best, sometimes it's like the hamster wheel. You're trying to get ahead of them, but you end up behind them
Yes.
and cleaning up the mess. So tell me, how do you address that with families of different income levels or different cultures? Have you found that you've been able to unify people because they come from everywhere? I mean, drug addiction does
Yes.
not choose, right?
You're so right. It doesn't choose at all. And because I grew up in a home, my father was a functioning alcoholic. He was a fireman and he took good care of his family and everything. But, behind closed doors, the family was in just great distress and disrepair. And ultimately my parents were divorced and everything. And so I did everything I could to kind of prevent that from happening. It was, of course, raised my kids in a Christian home, took them to church. They were going to a Christian school and really trying to vet their friends and really educate them on avoiding. When I was really looking, my radar was looking for alcohol and not really recognizing even what was involved with when my younger son started smoking pot with his friends and things like that. I just had no idea how quickly that was going to spiral. And by the time we found out, and he actually came and told us that marijuana that he was smoking was laced with addictive substance, which they do that a lot. I, really want to warn parents, like fentanyls and those type of things are out there, and the kids don't know what they're getting their hands on because it's not what they think it is. And so that's the reason it can hit anybody of any financial, families from different financial backgrounds, different faith-based backgrounds, all of that. It can hit anybody because one of my children was just wanting to be cool and hang out with his new friends at his new school and got in with the wrong crowd. One had graduated from college already and had a major surgery, and his became resulted from, pharmaceuticals. And so that's why we have to always be alert, because we don't know what they're being actually exposed to. Some are trying to numb pain, and others are trying to just have fun and be accepted by, the cool kids club. And so it gave me a lot of empathy for the different reasons why this happens to families. I do find that we tend to maybe put a little bit too much faith in the systems and hoping that they will be the answer. And, that could be anything from a 12-step program to medical dual diagnosis type rehab type programs. And some will work and some won't. It just really depends on where your loved one's at the time and where their headspace is and if they're fully committed to getting the help that they need. And so I find for the most part from my observations that the help that the Lord, because I'm in a Christian community, does provide help when that person's truly ready. It may not be the help in the form that they want. It may be, that they're going to a Salvation Army program that's a free program or a teen challenge. They may not want that. They may want to go to some really nice resort type rehab, but wherever God wants them to be, he will send people, around them to encourage them and help them through the process if they're ready. That's always the hard part is as the loved ones where we look at what we think is their lowest point and say, oh, they can't possibly go any lower. This has to be the lowest that they're willing to go before they'll get help. And the other thing I think I've learned is that, it sounds almost like an either or, like they want help or they don't. But it's like us going on a diet. We go on a diet and there's all these foods that we're not allowed to eat. And then they're the only foods we think about. And so without that support of community and people telling you you're going to get past this and hey, let's go for a run or let's go do these other things, it's easy to become fixated on the thing that you can't have. And then of course they've got the spiritual things that the Lord's working with them on, whether they're Christian or not, God's still drawing them to him through this process. And then the mental and the emotional too. So I've just learned to have a lot of compassion for the families, but also for the person who's struggling with addiction and battling addiction because I haven't walked in their shoes and I thought I might get like harder hearted. But what God has really done is broken my heart and made me very tender hearted. And that doesn't mean that gives us permission to enable or anything like that, but it does give us empathy. And when we have empathy and compassion, then the Lord can really speak to us about how to love that person like he would love them. And sometimes it does mean that you go through a period of no contact, and other times it means that you can love them, but if you can't do that without enabling them, it may be that you're the one that needs the break because the Lord wants you to put your trust in him and keep your eyes on him. So it's a big journey. From the time the book was published, my family has gone through so much, everything short of my son's death. Suicide attempt, major, car accidents. He goes into psychosis and a missing person. And we go into really hard things. And so there could probably be another book, out of it, except that it's what God's done in my heart. And I'm just grateful for the peace that I know that if I seek him, that he will give me the wisdom in that moment to get through it. And that would be my encouragement to anyone going through this. Is that he's going to be there with you. He promises he will.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking about Stormy O'Martin's book, Lord Change Me. Like, we want to change everybody else around us, but really he's doing a work in our heart. And that's what it sounds like he's done for you, which is
Yes.
such a blessing. It's very gracious, and it helps us to have a whole different perspective.
Yes.
So on that line, that was my other question is, as you were writing this book, did it help you to heal as you were doing the research and finding, as you said, what helps them, what doesn't help them? I may want this, but it's not what they want. Tell us
Right.
how the writing process helped you in your journey.
Well, the interesting thing about this book was that I originally was looking at it because I had so much fear, so much anxiety in me. And when the Lord challenged me, Dawn, do you trust me? And I was like, yes, Lord, I do, but I want to trust you more. And he said, well, then you need to take a deep dive into what I say about addiction and life-controlling bondages and strongholds and all of that, because I'm not silent on any of this in my word. You're running to the world, and while they have good knowledge, I have wisdom. And so he really started to pull me into the scriptures to do a study where I could balance the things I was reading about and hearing in the world along with the truths in the Bible. Because for me, I was spiraling downward by by getting the knowledge from the world and then saying, hey, Lord, will you come along and strengthen me and help me? And he's like, but I really want you to know my truth and share it. And so I thought I was writing initially like a Bible study, because I did a study on the book of Hosea and God's just relentless love for wandering hearts. But then he said, now I want you to take everything you've learned and you're going to condense it down and you're going to put it into a book format. And so that's how, and I actually ended up writing a Bible study afterwards that my church just went through. And so from a lot of the information that I learned. And so as I started to go through this, I really recognized that I had made my child an idol. And my children an idol, and that God is the only one who should be on the throne of my heart. So it was a big challenge for me to recognize that in my faith journey of being a Christian for so many years, that I had allowed this to happen without really even recognizing it and just thinking I was being a mom. And so when I went through the process of writing, there were some holes, there were some gaps as I started to put personal stories in there. And I remember wrestling with a chapter once and thinking, Lord, I don't have a story to go with this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about me. It could be about someone else. It could be just something I've read, but I just feel like it's a blank canvas. And I know what you want the chapter to be about, but I don't know how to personalize it. And my son was going through a really hard time. And I remember crying out to the Lord and saying, don't you see us? Don't you care? Now, this is in the middle of me writing the book and trying to encourage other moms. I'm saying, don't you see us and don't you care? And I'm so alone and I feel so devastated. And I wasn't really even discussing it with my husband or anything because I knew it was just burdening him. I was just praying. And that night I was laying on my bed. My back was hurting. My little dog was laying next to me. And I'm normally not on the bed at that time, but we had really high winds. And all of a sudden, the window shook really hard and it got sucked out into the ground, out into the yard. And my dog flew out. This wind was so high in Las Vegas at the time. And my husband was trying to get over to the lumber yard to get some lumber before the place closed at 9:00 at night. It was just freezing cold. And this wind was the curtains were, like Wizard of Oz. They were everywhere. And finally got it all boarded up. And the Lord said to me, he goes, normally that window would have come crashing in on you. He said, if the enemy had his way, that would have gotten hit by something outside that was flying, and that window would have come crashing in on you, and it was only a few feet away from your bed. And he said, but I pushed back the power of darkness, and the window went out instead of in. And he goes, I want you to realize how I have my eye on every moment of your life, and I have it on every moment of your child's life. And the next morning, my husband came in crying, and he said, we got him to go into treatment. And it was my husband and my son's girlfriend were working behind the scenes, and I didn't even know it. And they were able to get him to go into a program. And here I felt so alone. I was accusing God of being so alone. And he showed me his hedge of protection on me, and that his hand was on my family. And so I had to work through that process, during the writing of healing, and also continually being challenged by God to say I trust him, and then to really believe that even if I couldn't see it, he was still working, and how much he loves my family and cares. And that it doesn't always have to be me coming up with the solutions, right? Because I'm mom, they got to come up with all the solutions.
Yes.
And so very humbling for me at that point too. To recognize his protection, and then recognize that he did something that I had nothing to do with at all.
And now you're helping so many other people through your story. And I want our listener to hear that if she's got a story to share, that just because she hasn't healed from it, or she doesn't know how God's going to show up, then you can still share that story and say, hey, I'm in the
Yes.
middle of this. I don't know how it's going to end, or if it ever will.
Right.
But this is how you stay faithful in the middle. And that's the hardest part to stay faithful in,
It really is. Before my son's recent breakdown, which was just a few weeks ago, that we went through everything you could go through, like I said, except, praise God, he survived. But it was such a condensed episode. It was such a short period of time that all of this happened within probably a little over a week. We're talking an arrest. We're talking a car accident that totaled other cars. Just numerous things all at once. My emotions could not handle how fast everything was coming at me. And my husband and I were talking about the siege warfare that the enemy had launched against our family, and how it was coming in. He was pressing in from all sides, and that it's coming so quick that you cannot do anything but just stand in the presence of God, or sit in the presence of God. And in my book, I write about one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, which is 2 Chronicles chapter 20. And at that point, King Jehoshaphat was dealing with the same thing. 3 enemies were coming in from all sides, and Israel was trapped. And he called a fast and prayer. He said, we are powerless against this enemy. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. And ultimately what happened was they called a fast, they prayed, the Levites led the people in worship and praise, and they saw the victory of God. And there's those times, I believe, that we don't know what to do. We are powerless against what the enemy is doing in us. And we want to think, oh, I'm strong in the Lord, but his power is made perfect in our weakness. And there's those times when all we can do is praise him and trust him and believe him that he is doing something more than we can even ask or imagine. And so I don't want anyone to think that I kind of go around like, spiritually floating on a cloud through all of this. I feel all the emotions, and my flight and fight or freeze response is overly activated. Like my body is constantly dealing with, if a doorbell rings, my body still will react to it by a little bit of jump. And there's one thing about I want to encourage the people who are going through anything really hard, is that, yes, there's trauma treatment and things like that. But when you're going through ongoing, repeated trauma, and you're just starting, and you know what that's like, Carrie, because you grew up in it, and then you just have time to take a breath, and then maybe something comes on you again.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes your body doesn't have a chance to reprogram itself. It doesn't know how to be. Because I had an episode once where I thought I handled it so well, and then the Lord confronted me and said, Dawn, you were actually operating in freeze. And during that time, I wanted you to actually I stayed at work. My son had attempted suicide, and I was waiting to find out. Well, the police were going to his apartment. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. And I stayed at work because I was in freeze, but I didn't think I was in freeze. So I was waiting to hear back. And the Lord said, Dawn, if there was ever a right, he goes, I bet you thought that you really handled that well. And I was like, yeah, God, I did pretty good. And and he said, no, he goes, if there was ever a right time to go home and be with your husband or go to your son's apartment to see if he was okay, that was the time to do it. So he started to reveal to me those times when I think that I'm strong or I think I'm handling things okay, I'm actually operating in a freeze.
Mm.
And so I want to encourage people that it doesn't always mean that you're going to feel better physically right away, but there is this grace that God gives us to carry us in those hard times that we look back and go, gosh, I only survived because he carried me,
Yes.
that he got me through it. And so this last thing that we went through, I'm still coming out of what I would consider this cognitive dissonance or this almost freeze, because I couldn't have functioned if I broke down. I couldn't have continued on to do the things I needed to do. But now the Lord's peeling back those layers and saying, now let's kind of work on, let's work on your heart, Dawn. Let's work on the things that you were going through. And one of the things that he said to me is, short of a miracle, this is your son's life. He's a bipolar 1, and that was just recently diagnosed. And so a lot of what's going on is because he hadn't been properly diagnosed for so long. And so a lot of it's good to have this understanding, right, of what's going on, but also to understand that that's kind of a diagnosis where, except for a miracle, that person will have to live with that diagnosis. And what comes along with that is sometimes they do go back to self-medicating, and you're praying that they'll learn other tools. He loves the Lord, but that, just really being filled with the Lord's presence and the Lord's Spirit to empower him to be able to continue to say no to harmful decisions and continue to say yes to the right decisions. And so for me, that was at first, it's going to take a miracle, made me feel almost discouraged. But then the Lord said, but Dawn, you have breath in your lungs because you're a miracle. Like today, the fact that you have breath in your lungs is that my breath is in you. And because we're all miracles. And if the enemy had or if he was successful at what he wanted to do, he would be silencing all of us as believers. He would be shutting us up. He would be getting rid of us. He'd be doing whatever he could do. And the fact that you and I can come here and talk about this and talk about hope and talk about God's grace is a miracle. And so then the Lord was able to spin my perspective like, yes, my hope is in the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yes.
So my encouragement to anybody who is writing a hard story and feels like, hey, I'm not quite there yet, just start to write the things that the Lord is already showing you that can offer some hope and encouragement. And I think that people want to know that we have it all. It's not always that you can look back and say, oh, I could put a tidy bow on this and it's done. Those testimonies are miraculous and we love them and they strengthen us and they give us so much courage to go on. But how many of us know people who are just going through really hard things and they seem like they don't end? Or maybe we ourselves are going through those hard things. I think coming alongside people and saying, I understand, not only have I walked in your shoes, I'm walking in your shoes. And so I want to encourage anybody who maybe is going through something like that. Maybe they have a loved one with a chronic illness or perhaps dementia or Alzheimer's. They're a caregiver to somebody who's really struggling. Those stories do matter. Though they matter a lot. And so I encourage you just to be writing about it and journaling. And anytime the Lord gives you a pearl of hope, put that on paper because someone needs to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I see moms in the grocery store and they have little ones with them and they're just like, stop touching that. No, you can't have that. And I just look at them and I'm like, you are so physically exhausted right now. You're in the hardest time of motherhood. But let me just tell you, when they get to be adults, all that physical energy turns to emotional energy.
Yes, it does.
And you're just as exhausted. And it's just as hard because whether it's addiction or career choices or like my oldest is in the Army, I never know what he's up to.
Yes.
I'm just praying for that all the time. But yeah, it is. You're just constantly hoping and praying that you did all you could do to prepare them for this life as an adult in this crazy world we live in. And then if you grew up with addiction in your home and you made all those promises to yourself that this would never happen in your family, but you never say never
Right.
because your children are going to say and do things that, I mean, I was that mom. I was in my kids' backpack. I was looking under their mattresses. I mean, one of my sons had a little chair in his room. I unzipped it and found some vapes one time. And I just remember thinking, it's a good thing I grew up with addiction in my household because I
Yes.
know what to look for.
Yes.
And I know to say, hey, by the way, I found this in your room. We're not going to do this, you
Hmm.
know? So David McGee is from Mississippi, and his son went to the hospital in the emergency room one night with an overdose. That son survived and looked at his dad and said, "You think I'm bad off? You need to check William." And I know. And they were both in the same fraternity at Ole Miss. And so William and his brother went through rehab. William ended up passing away. But so David McGee goes around to all the schools. He's been on national TV, but he is on a mission to help people who are addicted or caring for someone who is addicted. And he started the William McGee Center on Ole Miss's campus to help kids who need counseling.
Wow, that's
And he
great.
yeah, so when he came to speak at Jackson Prep where my child was going to school, he came home and he was like, "Mom, I don't want you to end up like David McGee." And at that point, we were able to take the steps to move forward because COVID did a number on these kids.
Yes, it did.
It did a number on us, but it did a number on these kids. And like you, am on high alert. But I have to check myself sometimes, and I have to be like, "Okay, Carrie, you need to take care of Carrie today,
Right.
and you need to lay your children at the foot of the cross."
Hmm. And what you're saying is so important because my oldest son, the one that really has continued to really battle this, is 39 years old now. His brother is 36. And then my daughter, who lives at home with me because she's on the autism spectrum, she's 33. And so the Lord was really saying to me, like, these are men. And and my oldest son, like his life is half over, or maybe not quite half over, but because people live longer, but like the decisions he's making have long-term results as an adult. And what I'm finding is as we get older, we don't have the stamina. Like our body can't take all these emotional hits and know every detail of everything that they're going through and everything. So I really do encourage the parents with what you're saying right now is I'm so grateful that my younger son, he was 17 when we caught this. And he was the one who came and said, something's not right. I thought I was just smoking pot. And he was willing to get the help. But he was at a place where mom and dad had so much more influence and even control in his life. Like there was absolutely no way I wasn't going to go through his room and check things. And, I just didn't even know back then, like how to get a drug test. I thought you had to take kids to the emergency room. I didn't know any of what you can do now as parents. But as parents now, you have, this is a minor child or even a child, someone living in your home. You might be 18, 19, 20, 21. Catch it while they're young and don't be afraid to go and ask the hard questions and search their room if you have to in those things because you might be saving their life.
And I love the nuts and bolts of the practical things that a parent can do. And any advice you have for a parent, I would love to hear it. But I was the same way. I never dreamed of testing my own children. But now at Walmart, you can get a drug test.
Easy.
And
Yeah,
if you just tell your child you're going to drug test them, I mean, mine would be like, don't even test me. I'll just
right.
tell you. Just
That's
like,
right.
wow. That's all I
Yes.
had to do was
Yeah.
threaten to test you.
Yes, and if you have an ongoing problem, Amazon has them like multiple kits and things, so you don't have to go pay the high price at CVS or somewhere for them. So it's much more accessible, and it's good to also know if you suspect, find out. Because again, they don't know what they're using, and they're very dangerous drugs. And I know our country is going through kind of a good change that's going on in securing the borders more to prevent some of these dangerous drugs from coming in. But the drug lords and those type of people, they're going to find a way because it's their business. And so, yeah, they're going to do what they need to do. And it's just it can be more dangerous. And the kids might think they know what they're playing with, but not have a clue what they're playing with. And sometimes it's like mom and dad are the ones who show them, look what else is in here. You think you're just doing this, but you're actually doing a very dangerous drug, and like the pill parties and things. Be very careful because those are usually just illegal street-made drugs, and the children need to know how dangerous those are. So practically speaking, I would say that this is definitely not the time or place for you to isolate, that you definitely need support. And it's hard. I mean, sometimes you have to look till you find the right support for you. I found that I had a hard time with some of the support that was out there because it left me feeling hopeless, and I wanted to feel like empowered and feel knowledgeable, but still have hope. And so for me, Christian support was very helpful, and I will still do research. I don't have my head in a hole. I'm still understanding what's out there and learning about it. Also, in my group with the Christian Moms of Addicted Children, the women do come together and kind of offer support and offer education and things. We're not really a lobbying group, and we're not really science. We're about praying for the children, encouraging the moms to glorifying God. But because we're having the conversations, that support is there. So just finding that support that you need. I also recommend a good Christian, but a knowledgeable addiction and mental health counselor. So the same one that was working with my children also offered us support as a family. And there were times when he would say, this is something I'm going to ask you to do. And it was a really hard thing. And he would explain to me, from all my years of doing this, Mom, I know this is the right thing. It's going to seem hard, but you need to do this. Dad, you need to do this. And so it helped to have that education and to have the knowledgeable therapists, and then to have the other moms and families that were going through it too. And just processing it is so important because it becomes so big when it's just in your own head. But as we start to process it and hear other people's stories, we feel more encouraged, and we can ask those questions. And if they don't know the answer, they'll help us get to the answer. Yeah. And so I think knowledge is power, but just making sure that you don't feel like you have to then go do something to make your child or your loved one change, because that's the process that they're going to have to figure out. And the best thing for you to do is to not enable them in any way, but also I had to learn most of the time to keep my mouth shut and pray that, that they didn't have to hear Mom's opinion about everything all the time. And that was a big challenge for me because I have a lot of words.
I was going to say that's the hardest
Yes,
part.
it is. It is. And so that would be, but first of all, just getting, there's lots of different support out there, but it's a matter of finding what works for you. There's parents of addicted loved ones. I know there's Hope for Hurting Parents. Those are some Christian ones. I tend to gravitate towards those. There's also, of course, Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, and those ones for maybe people who want a little bit more traditional 12-step type support. That's out there as well. Celebrate Recovery's out there. And also on Facebook, going on to these social media platforms, there's a lot of groups, and they can find support there as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. Community, one-on-one, in a group, whatever that looks like, find a friend.
Yes.
Find a friend to help you get those words out, because like you say, our adult children don't want all our words. They want our
Right.
love,
Yes.
and they want our support, but they really don't want all our words unless they're just, I love you and I support you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a challenge, but it does help. I find myself erasing most of my texts, And the other thing is, and especially when they're adults, is to talk to them about their other things that go on, in their life. And I know some of the kids are really out there. They're on the streets. It's really a bad situation. The parents haven't heard from them. But if you're still in communication, even if they're just dreaming about their future and they're saying, oh, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to do these things, instead of saying, well, you got to get free from drugs first, you might want to say something like, well, what kind of work are you thinking about? What are your opportunities? What are you interested in? Like just having the normal conversations that you would have if your child wasn't struggling with addiction. And I'm not saying be in denial, but I'm saying make most of your conversation around what interests them, what their hopes are, what their aspirations are. Then when you do speak into their life about these struggles and things, it's not this desperate just this desperation of I've got to change his mind. I've got to make him see. I've got to get reason into him. Instead, it's more of, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? And then how can I encourage you in that? And that's taken a lot of practice for me because I always, mama knows best.
Because we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have found that's my text typically to my children in the morning is, how can I pray for you today?
Good.
And sometimes it's just school or work or, but at least they know that I'm praying.
Yes.
And when they've been at a very low place in their life, they'll call me and say, Mom, will you pray for me?
Yes.
And so if they know that they can depend on you for prayer, what else do we have? I mean, if we have the power of God helping us, like
Yes.
you say, then we're golden. We
Yes, we
can
are.
truly trust that He's going to take care of them.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. You're obviously a mighty woman of God and saved and strong. But for strong, I just want to remind the listeners that the title in Saved and Strong means spiritually strong
Yes.
because I come from a nursing background and I come from a healing background, and we are spiritual, mental, and physical. And so always tap into all three areas of your life, especially if you're a mom and you're caring for your family, because we are physically and mentally and spiritually taking care of everybody else, but sometimes we eat the burnt toast. And so
Yes.
I just want to be sure that every listener hears us say, take care of your family, but take care of yourself first. And
Yes.
that means God first. Whether you're an early bird or a night owl, be sure you're diving into scripture. You're worshiping when it's hard to worship. You're praying when it's hard to pray. But that is what is going to carry us through.
It is. Our relationship with the Lord is everything. And I'm just so grateful for him because he always knows what I need before I even ask for it. And that's, like you said, that consistent time of just being with him in the word and praying and spending time in praise. That is going to strengthen us for whatever comes ahead of us, whatever lies ahead, is knowing that his presence is with us and that we are never walking alone when we have Jesus.
Amen, sister. Well, I could talk to you all day.
Thank you.
But I try to keep my podcast 30 to 45 minutes because I know moms are busy. They're probably listening on a walk or while they're cooking dinner. And so I just pray for the listener now, that as they're listening to this, that they will find hope and that they will order your book and that they will join your group, your Christian moms group of addicted children, because we know there's a whole lot more moms and women out there who are caring for somebody that's addicted who may never admit that they are, but they'll pick up a book and they'll join a group of strangers because, we protect our community because we don't want to be judged. And
Right.
that's our flesh. What I love about the current time that we live in is people are willing to be more honest about the
Yes.
problems that they're experiencing. And it opens up so many doors for people to walk through and to be accepted
Yes.
and to be accepted. And so thank you, Dawn. Thank you for doing the hard work because there's nothing easy about writing a book. It is a daunting task, but you stepped into that obedience, and I pray that you are blessed because of it.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me.
Sure, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. So I may be reaching out to you to join your group. It sounds like a great group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love the ladies. They're so sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the listener for being here for the full 45 minutes. And please reach out to Dawn. All her information is going to be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dawn.
Thank you.